Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for the welcome and for being on your show this morning.
Yes, and we do appreciate your time with us as well. Now, I found this quite interesting, Dr. Harvey, talking about the impact of prepaid water meters and on poor households, and the relevance and how this actually relates to black working class women and their existence. Just the thinking behind this study, Doctor.
Well, the, the PhD study dealt with the impacts of prepaid water meters in a place called Piri in Soweto. But you must remember there's a history to that. Before that took place, they outsourced and formed a private arm's length company. So they shut down the water department in the Johannesburg municipality and they formed Johannesburg Water. An arm's length, 1 foot in the private sector, 1 foot in the public sector. And it is because water then began to become commercialized, corporatized, and commodified, the triple C's I call, that installation, and it wasn't an installation, it was an imposition. As I indicated in the Star article, they even in the final stage of the project, they had to pull in the army in Piri to quell the unrest. People were ripping the water meters out of the ground. They were furious with it because they were not consulted, etc. So that's that background. That history is very important. That's where you get city power. That's where you get Joburg Water. Everything was commercialized and arm's length companies, utilities were formed. And as to the question of black, or more specifically in this case, Black African women, as the statistics South Africa characterizes these people. It is African women always, historically and culturally, who deal far more with water than men do. You know, the household chores, washing, and the rest of it, cleaning, and etc. So, in that sense, I said that these very negative impacts were weighed heavily and predominantly on the shoulders of black women, African women specifically. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it certainly does. But, obviously, when one looks at the reality of the situation and the people that have obviously borne the brunt of poverty, of the social problems, the socio-economic problems, unemployment, have been largely or majority, they have been black women. And this, obviously, you highlight in your article, and you even call it one of the biggest indictments of ANC rule since 1994.
Oh, man, you could write books. I just completed a new book. It's published in January, on what has happened in post-apartheid South Africa. And I deal exactly with some of these issues, water, sanitation. I mean, that's just water. I don't even want to go to sanitation. Sanitation is actually worse in this country than water. So those homes where they run out of water, what they did subsequently was that they installed these meters, and then thereafter they came with a program, an indigency program. So they got rid of the 6,000 free kiloliters that were allowed to all households, and they replaced it with an indigency provision, meaning that you only qualified for a limited amount of water if you were registered as indigent. And it's a very stigmatizing process. So my master's, not PhD, showed that a lot of people, there was very poor take-up on indigency, because it's a very stigmatizing bureaucratic process they have to endure, and a lot of them just never took it up. And, if they couldn't cough up the money to recharge the meter, or they never qualified for that indigency, they went without water. Now, when you go without water, it's not just going without tap water. You don't have flush. So if you have flush sanitation, you can't flush the toilet. And so people went to, and it was a danger to women. They were going outside at night to defecate outside,
Yes.
So the horrors of these things, and the media hasn't really dealt much with it. I exposed it in the PhD study, but it's the most undignified thing. So it's not just the denial of water, but the sanitary aspects. I think is the most horrifying because you can't flush the toilet, and you're forced, therefore, to
Mm.
go outside the house, and it became a problem with women, young women, having to go outdoors and find a place where, it's
Yes.
terrible. So I'm just saying what we know about the people who have been deprived of water in this country, you don't know the full picture unless you deal with sanitation. And that is the one thing that's underreported and underexplored and unresearched.
Mm.
Under-researched in South Africa is what it's sanitation is actually we worse off with sanitation than we are with the water provision. The two are linked, especially in local government. It's always been like that, water and sanitation. But really, you need a separate show to just deal with the sanitation. So, I mean, what I discovered with the PhD studies, at that time they had the 6,000 liters, and with bigger families, by the 15th, that 6,000 free liters was exhausted. And you'd find mothers bathing, and their daughters go into the same bath water because they want to save water. The 6,000 liter, a
Yes.
liter is very little, especially for big families. And that's what my study, one of the horrifying results of the installation and position of these meters and a very limited 6,000 liters was that mothers were bathing. And same thing with fathers and their sons or daughters would then go into the same dirty bath water in order to save water.
Mm. In fact, obviously this is quite shocking in terms of what's come out. But also, I think you also make mention that the very people that many of these women had their hopes on, and they identified with these women would be the leadership, particularly when we look at organizations like the ANC Women's League, who had miserably failed them, Dr. Harvey.
Oh, I've did so many pieces on the ANC Women's League for Viral Afaji when she was editor of City Press. Yeah, no, it's one of these stories that hardly gets ventilated in public, and really it's a serious problem. The ANC Women's League has never lifted a finger, believe me. I even attempted to interview them when I did that PhD study to hear from them why they declined me an interview. They never responded to the email that requested an interview from them because they knew that they had been doing nothing at all,
Mm.
Yeah, so it's a very serious indictment. I mean, if you can't provide basic water and sanitation to people, what are we talking about, And we've got a constitution that enshrines the right to water. So this is just words, it's just words. It means little. I mean, there's so many constitutional rights. We look at the Bill of Rights, the right to water, electricity, all that is there. But that's a far cry from what really happens on the ground in townships. I mean, so you have a constitution that allows you that, and alongside that, in Soweto, I found that during winter especially, I mean, a lot of families were going without water, sanitation, and electricity in winter months because they couldn't recharge, they unemployed, etc., couldn't recharge the meters. And so you often found households without both water and electricity at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
No, I think this is really, if you're talking about very negative consequences, and you must remember you can't talk about this in vacuum. This is the result of neoliberal social policies. This is why we've got this problem and why the townships have been burning from 2004, June. It started in the Orange Free State. It's been burning nonstop. We're the produce capital of the world, And it's
Definitely.
ironical that we're the produce capital of the world under an ANC government. Think about that. South Africa has become the produce capital of the world, and the ANC rules this country from 1994. So that tells you what I'm talking about, the glaring lack of social justice. And this is just some of the things. There's lots of issues to talk about,
Well, Dr.
I
Ibrahim,
think what,
I know,
yeah,
unfortunately, time has actually run out,
I
but
know. It's always like that.
I'd like to hold you to another discussion. And you mentioned
No,
sanitation,
yeah, it's
and
fine. Yeah,
I think
gladly.
from time to time we need to have these discussions surrounding social justice, and
Mm.
hoping that on a regular basis we can cover some of these topics, inshallah.
Okay, man. Okay, thanks, man.
Yes, shukran for that and for your time with us this morning. Assalamu
Yes.
alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
That was Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, political writer, analyst, and also joining us this morning. Quite an interesting discussion. And with that, we're heading straight towards closure of the show this morning. Next up is going to be Juice 20 by Sheikh Mishari Rashid. And until we meet tomorrow, same time, same place, from all of us here at Salam Media, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media, humanitarian journalism.